we feel this plan supports our mission, vision, and core value, and most importantly, our people. And again, we are working with our finance department and HR and with the city manager to make sure that we're doing that fiscally. One of the things that's going to happen is there's a 3% coming in April. We've built that into the program that we know, and we're waiting, like I said, as far as hiring, we just pushed out. We have 419 people that applied to come to this fire department. The first part of it, we reach out to see who will set up to come to our physical agility test. Normally, we look for about 50%. So we sent the emails out, and within a week, we've actually had 89 people reply that they want to start the process with us. So again, I think that we're on the right path. I think this is a good foundation for us to build off of for our fire employees to see that we care about them. And again, next slide, please, is I'll take any questions that anybody has about the program.
All right. Thank you so much. First, Chief Jones, let me say thank you. And the Chief Meadows, if they're on. I want to thank our public safety for all of the work that they do, especially Jones, the work that you all have done in the past 2 weeks. It's said that buildings don't burn that much anymore, but we've had 2 big fires here on National in as many weeks here in Camelot, and then over in District 6 in
Kimberly
of Kimberly Mills. So thank you all so much for what you do in your quick response. And with that, the first speaker I see is Councilwoman Willis.
Thank you. So for the tuition assistance, Chief Jones, when are you going to institute that?
It's money. So what we're doing as we develop our programs out, we are looking at tuition reimbursement as part of a program and an incentive. We're also looking at building out, which we have today in our training budget, bringing classes in. One of the things that's a hindrance of there is obviously we don't have a training facility. Thank y'all for your support in Cascade Palmetto, but we are hoping, and once that facility is going to be a world class. We're actually talking with Metro Atlanta, Atlanta Technical College, West Georgia Technical College, Columbia Southern, Columbus State, to actually bring in classes here and different certifications that will actually give them college credit. Also, the Pathway program is another program. So we're actually looking at how we can introduce college programs here and get them without actually the tuition reimbursement, but we are working on different avenues to build the finances so that we can offer tuition reimbursement to those and get those associates and bachelor's and even master's degrees throughout the department. So PD is a little bit ahead of us on that, but we are working on it as part of the entire professional development plan.
So you said there were several people who dropped out of the promotion process. Do you have an idea of why they dropped out?
We asked, and really what we were just told, it was personal. So without prying or getting in, that was when they wrote their letter to say that they were withdrawing. That's what they put. We turned it over to HR. And again, that was what we got.
Okay. And Ms. Sadler Jones, I would like for you to look into that, because that is concerning to me that, we got people dropping out of our promotion process, and it was 3 people. That's I would like for you to do a deeper dive in that, if you don't mind. Pay for performance. And what I'm concerned about is our employees that are here and who have been here and who have been working for a while. And as they see the Metro Atlanta, I know they have the $1,000 bonus coming from the state, but you're recommending that we don't do the bonus structure similar to what Chief Meadows is doing Am I understanding because of the compression issues and because you feel that if they get a bonus, they still going to be making the same amount of money? So really, it's not going to solve anything. Is that what I'm clear? Is that what I'm hearing you recommend?
Yes, ma'am. PD was able to adjust some of their salaries about 2 years ago, from my understanding, prior to me coming. And that is one of the concerns I've had, and talking with members out in the department is they've been stuck at that same pay, and there's no scale to move up. So again, we're doing a captain and lieutenant process, and the captain, if I promote him in a couple of months, is going to be making the same amount of money that a captain has been doing it for 2 or 3 years, even 3.5 years on the same scale. So that compression. So what this does is it's going to allow us again. And if you saw that where it goes to, I'll just use captain rank, a captain, then a captain 1, captain 2. Everybody within the department will get a bump because they will move up at least to the 1 step, if not the 2, because of the 4 years on the job. So they're going to have that increase, and not just a one-time bonus, but it would be an increase, and then it would be lasting because their pay would be raised. And again, they can look forward to, if they complete the classes, some of them have a lot of the classes, and they'll be ready to even move up further as soon as the time and the grade comes. And this is something for us to come for a long time. It'll be that foundation, and then we can build off of it.
So the premium pay that Ms. Sally Jones talked about earlier, we have $800,000 in premium pay bucket for public safety. What are your thoughts around that? And what are your thoughts around the premium pay? What are you going to do as far as that concerned? And when is that going to be rolled out?
In their meetings, and what I can tell you is the premium pay and everything was assigned to Miss Nikki Graham. I know myself and Keith have been asked about it, and we're all for it. So as far as it rolling out or exactly how it's going to be implemented, they're still working out those details from what I understand. So I can't expound on it anymore. But any money for our employees, I'm all for.
Okay, so some of the employees have complained about not being able to take paid time off. Some of the employees have complained about not being able, their pay not being correct. I guess, Chief Jones, what immediate gratification can you give employees who are very frustrated, who are very annoyed, who feel that there is low morale, who feel that, you know, they don't have fair wages, they don't have fair compensation, they don't have the best equipment? I know you have plans for the equipment, but what immediate gratification can you give employees who don't feel like they're being fairly compensated, and who are in need of, who's been working through the pandemic for the city, you know, run into the trouble while most of us get to go to sleep in our house and live in our comfy houses. They have to, you know, respond no matter what. What immediate gratification within the next 30 days are you looking to give these employees aside of the state funding that's coming from the governor?
Well, one, like you said, we're working with HR to fix a lot of that, but initial gratification, I'm working with Mr. Don Toms, Assistant City Manager. We met yesterday about a plan. One of the things, like you said, the time, one of the things we've already done to rectify some of the things in this budget, previous to me coming, some of their overtime was paid in comp time, which escalated because their comp time numbers got up, their vacation time got up, and their holiday time came up. We are speaking with HR because the actual handbook says you have to take your comp time before anything else, and if they're earning it, it was a problem. So what we already did in this budget is we're not doing comp time. They're actually getting overtime for any overtime hours that are worked. So we have an overtime budget, which is helping for instant gratification because they're getting time and a half. The other thing that we're doing is we're trying to use some of the money to pay off or pay down all of the comp time. So that would be a nice check for them, working with HR to move towards paying for holiday. And then we have instituted where we are allowing more people off. So people are now starting to use time more because we have our numbers back up a little bit from what we were with hiring. We have more people coming on. We got 2 people coming to the field next week. So again, we're being very, we're looking at it very, what's the word I'm looking for? But we're to make sure people are taking time off and talking to them. So those are kind of the things we're doing instantly. This also would be with the salary savings, something we can do within the next couple of months. And we're working with HR for those other type of pay that are going to come out with the ARP. So we are looking at quite a few different things to help the promotions. These are the first promotions. And when we go to, I've been to the stations the last couple of days. People are excited. They're excited about the professional development. They are excited about the opportunity to be promoted. And again, that's something that we're doing step by step and getting processes in places. So hopefully that, and we're listening to them. So we think some of the small changes are helping.
So a couple of things, Chief Jones, and then I'll yield. You and I met with city manager office yesterday, and be transparent, colleagues. I will be working with the city manager to bring forth a resolution to help pay some of this comp time down, so that our firefighters will get, be able to, like you said, take some funds home immediately from comp time. But I would encourage the same thing that I have said to Ms. Sadler Jones: communication. Mm-hmm. It's simple as sending out something to these employees, letting them know where we are as far as the state funding, where we are as far as premium pay. I am disappointed that we do have $800,000 in a bucket, and it's 6 months later and we haven't done anything with it. I am disappointed in that. And then you have said a lot. You gave a great presentation, but I would like to see some timelines around the implementation of some of the things that you suggested: tuition assistance, promotion, people moving up through the ranks based on certification, all of that. I just don't think that your workforce can stand going over 6 months waiting for some of this stuff to be implemented, because we are losing, according to the data that we have gotten back today, we're losing public safety officers every day to other agencies. And I'll yield, Mayor, for somebody else to speak, and I'll come back later.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yes, Councilmember Reeves.
Yes, I see Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me. Thank you, Chief Jones, for that presentation. I do want to have a question. The people who have dropped out for personal reasons, they will have an opportunity to reapply?
Oh, yes. Just because someone decides they don't want to promote or take a test, it does not prohibit them from the next go around. Again, like I said, we did a sergeant exam last year. It was the first promotional exam that, to my knowledge, had been done. We promoted 14, and we're doing it in succession this year. Again, like I said, the captain and lieutenant promotion is, we're taking applications by the kind of the handbook. I think it's a 60-day window to give them time to study and prepare, which we are going to be doing some orientations and some studying to help them to be successful. We have an outside testing center that's going to test them. It's, I believe 3 parts. And then, of course, we'll have a compiled list and promote within the next probably 60 to 75 days for those captain and lieutenants. And we're about to announce another sergeant. So as soon as we do the captain lieutenant process, the sergeant test would come back. And right now, under the handbook, we are trying to change it for that list to be good for 2 years. It's only right now good for 1 year. And there's a lot that goes involved, is why we want to spread it to 2 years. But anybody that maybe doesn't feel they want to test this year, they're not prepared, whatever life brings them, the next time around, the eligibility is the eligibility, and they can put back in and go through the process. It does not hinder them to say, hey, I don't want to do this. But we'll see what we can do with HR about a deeper dive, but to find out why.
Absolutely. And then also too, you mentioned about the CERT program. Could you explain that program and what that does and what that means for citizens?
So I'll talk a little bit, expand on it. Our community risk reduction section is hitting on all cylinders right now. So not only are they doing inspections and education, they're pushing out the Camp Embers program, which is for young women in high school to come and take part in some leadership and firefighter. Some of the other programs that they want to bring in this fall, again, we're trying to get people in. We're putting in for grants for that funding, but a CERT program is a community emergency response team. And again, it's a 8-week program. We have instructors here. We're very excited about it. We get past this COVID, but businesses, communities, HOAs, friends and family, they can come in and we teach them skills on how to basically help their community in an emergency. So whether it's a tornado, a flood, an ice storm, it gives them skills to prepare not only their house, but their community so that they can basically survive 2 to 3 days without assistance. What that does is your public safety and your public works that are having to go out there to maybe clear roads or get trees up are not consistently responding on some of the 911 calls because the citizens are able to assist themselves with a large scale event such as that happens. It's a great program. Another one is the Fire Academy, which is another 8-week program, which gives people in the community a kind of a dive into what a life of a firefighter is each and every day. And again, skills, CPR, things like that. CPR Saturday, our community CPR is another program we want to bring. So again, our community risk, and that's where those civilians come in. A lot of them really like to get involved with things like that. They get certified and they want to help. So that's why we want to keep them.
Absolutely. And I went through that CERT program, and I think it's, one of the best programs that fire can offer. And also too, the goal for you in the hiring of more firefighters is to get 4 people on the apparatus.
Yes, sir. So NFPA standard is 4 with the relief factor. Currently, we've set minimal standards at 3. There's a lot of departments or some departments running with 2. That's very unsafe. Firefighter safety is our number one thing. So we're trying to push, and it's a double-edged sword because again, it limits how many people that can be off every day to make sure. But now that we have some overtime, we're being fiscally responsible. We're being strategic and making sure. But that is the ultimate goal, is to continue to grow our department to where we have 4 on all the apparatus, trucks and engines. And as we develop this Cascade Palmetto station, we'll add more people. And again, we're in the process of having a station location analysis done along with apparatus to help us with ISO, but really give us that deep dive into saying how many stations we need, how many people we need as we grow, working with community development. And we're going to see growth. We know it in our city over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Public safety needs to be prepared. We need to tell y'all ahead of time what we need, and that way we plan for it.
Yes, sir. Chief Jones, you just mentioned something. It helps with your ISO rating. Could you please elaborate for the edification of the public? What is ISO rating, and what does that actually do for the community?
Yes, sir. So what the ISO, which is your insurance rating, it's the insurance service organization, comes into a municipality. They do it all over the country, and they rate your fire department from a 1 being the best to a 10 being the worst. It's 3 components. It's the fire department, it's your water, municipal water, and it's your 911 radio communications. Fire has the biggest part of it. 50% of it comes from the fire department. The better your ISO rating, the lower your insurance rates go. Currently in the city, we are 3, what they call a 3-3X, because we do have some areas that does not have municipal water, but we're a 3-3X. One of the areas that we did not score very well in is what they call the deployment analysis, which basically that is, and it's fire only. So even though we may run EMS, we may run hazmat, it's fire only. So what they look at is our fire response, how quick we were able to get a certain number of firefighters on scene in a certain time. And then there's 2 benchmarks for those areas that have buildings that are over 3 stories or large warehouses that take over 3,500 GPMs. They also require a truck. Right now we have 2 trucks, one at Station 7 down on Buffington Road and one on Fulton Industrial Boulevard at Station 11. They each cover 45 square miles. So for them to get on scene and have a certain time limit, which is 9 minutes, we don't meet that mark as often as we should. But as we grow, we're going to be looking at that and know where strategically we need apparatus and we need personnel. Because again, as your personnel go into 2 different categories, staffing and deployment. So if you're not running 4, which will give you about 75% of the points, they work it off of 6. But there's some other ways that you can do it with some utilities to get your numbers up. And we're looking at every possibility so we can get every possible point. Our vision is to be a 1 within about 5 or 6 years.
Thank you, Chief Jones. As
Thank
we
you.
always want to be number 1.
Yes, sir.
I yield.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Reeves. I see next Dr. Rowell.
Thank you for acknowledging me. I have a couple questions. The first, we heard about a lot of proposed changes for the fire department. When police did their compensation, I'm assuming you're referencing when we did the pay and class study for the entire city. Is that what's being referenced?
Actually, talking with Chief Meadows, at one point they came back and they raised, once they come out into the field, they elevate a lot more than what we were doing. We were going, our pay right now goes from 42 to 44. Their recruits, I believe, start at 42, but then they jump up quite a bit more.
Okay, so I guess my question is, one, was that the pay and class study? It may be time, this is, just a comment for the city manager. It may be time for overall update to the pay and class study. It was when we, first came over, we basically adopted the pay scale that was in place with Fulton County. But again, we came after that with the pay and class study, which has a range. So I remember there being discussions about compression in the fire department then. So I guess I'm a little unclear if we didn't resolve that with the pay and class. It may be time to just look at it again. I'm not sure.
No, ma'am. I can tell you from talking and dealing with HR and looking at the numbers, what it did is it put everybody basically at that base pay. And so if we don't do anything and we've left it alone, it did fix some of the compression. I'll say that when it happened in 2019, but see, when we promote now, there was no upward mobility over the last 3 years. So a sergeant that's been a sergeant for the 4 years they've been here, if they're on base pay, when I promote a new sergeant, they go to base pay. So there's that compression. You have a one-day sergeant making the same as a 4-year sergeant, and it's throughout those ranks. So this will allow that separation for years of service and for knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be looked at, because when we had the discussion, if they're just doing it at the base pay, I recall there being specific conversation about the base and the midpoint, which should give you some latitude for that kind of situation if you're moving up. So, and I'm almost certain we had those conversations. So somebody needs to look, and I recognize that this team may not have been in place for some of that, but it's the reason it's a entry point, a midpoint, and a high point that you have some latitude. That's why you do a pay scale in the first place. So again, what might be the practice and what is allowed, I think, may be two different things. The second thing I have a question about is, I heard a lot of different initiatives in this presentation. I am very much interested in seeing the fiscal impact, because what I do know is the two biggest pool of employees in our cities are our fire and police. So before we act, really want to see what these numbers are. I know we had got a memo on that, for fire, that it was within their savings. You kind of mentioned that on some parts. I'm not clear if that's everything. So I just want clarity from finance, which part kind of fall where, and what, because all of this you may not be able to, of course, implement at one time. So understanding what that is, and it's helpful if it's not budgeted as we get ready to go in the mid-year budget in March is when we usually have that we have some context for what's available now to get to some of those goals versus what might occur in the future. So that's just something I would ask the finance director and the city manager to break out the cost for each of these components, whether it's the higher education, whether it's the, looking at your compression issues, those kind of things. And you just did promotions with just having some clarity about what costs fall under which buckets.
Yes, ma'am. And that was in the longer proposal, and kind of mentioned in this as a highlight that we were actually going to wait because we know the impact of the 3%, and we factored that in, and this would actually be coming after that. And then the incentives are the ones that we got to make sure that are fully vetted through. And we're also trying to get numbers on who would actually qualify today for those incentives and going forward. And that's why we even said the incentives may have to be pushed back a little bit, but that's our intent, is to not bring anything to the council for a vote or anything until we fully vet it through Ms. Dixon, Ms. Jones, and others to make sure that everything is funded and we know what we can do exactly and moving forward.
And just two quick questions. So I know we're current, and I'm going through a collective bargaining process. Is what you're presenting what you guys have agreed on, or is that something that, is this what you all have agreed on in terms, because it covers some of the same areas that I know y'all be discussing. So I just want to make sure, or will you wait until after that time? I'm just trying to be clear.
Yeah. Anything with the bargaining has to be done in executive session per what legal said.
Okay.
So I can elaborate.
Well, we'll wait. I don't want you to say anything. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see if I have any more questions. I think that would be it. I just primarily want to make sure we understand what we're signing up for in terms of budget. I'm going to ask Ms. Allard Jones if we are having these issues with the pay in class. Again, I think there's an interpretation, and I think the attorney may have opined on that recently, as of yesterday, to look at that, because I think it can address some of the things that Chief Jones has raised. So.
Yes, ma'am. I'll work with him. And yes, I did see his opinion, and I've read it, and I've discussed some concerns I had regarding the ability to do so. But I think you and I have kind of hit upon some things too. So yes, we will definitely be working with the fire chief. Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. I had some of those same fiscal questions as well. I'm going to take two more questions before we move to the next item. Councilwoman Gomes.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mayor. Chief Jones, I'm particularly interested in knowing your recruitment strategies for diversity, and then also to within internally, is there a leadership program where I guess some of the cadets are matched up with some additional leaders where they're getting those skills and things of that nature? Just wondering if it's a buddy system paired up to kind of help them grow through the process.
Yes, ma'am. So great questions. Thank you. And thank you all for these questions. So two things. We are looking at a hiring committee, something that they haven't done before. But we are looking at reaching out to different groups. One is going into the high schools here. The other is possibly working with some other partnerships to make sure that we are pushing towards more diverse firefighters. It's one of the reasons we have the Camp Embers, is reaching out to the female population, and trying to get them interested. Really, our cadet program and our pathway program in the high schools will help us to draw. But again, we're looking at building on a recruitment team so that we can focus on that. The second part of your question was about mentorship, and that is the whole packet that we're working on with. My team is working diligently on the professional development kind of strategy handbook. We have reached out, we've talked with Ms. Jones about different leadership education coming in, but really a good program does have that mentoring and coaching, and that will be, again, something that we will implement. It's going to take us time to get all these things in, but that's the thing is when they come out of the academy, is actually having a mentor that checks on them daily, gets them through that first year, second year. We're building some of that in, like I said, with the probationary and the task manuals, to also mentor and coach them at every level, so they're preparing for that next level and any challenges. But the main thing is been keyed on is communication and that professional development and just preparing our people. So we are tracking that, but we just have to get it implemented. And like y'all know, 4 years old, getting a lot of things implemented, it just takes time. But that is on our agenda to do, is the mentoring coaching.
Okay, now just one other question, circling back to the hiring committee. Just a quick snapshot. Who will be comprised of that hiring committee?
So my two deputies currently, Chief Wilson and Chief Moses, are working. They're reaching out actually with HR and our civilian staff to try to make sure that we have a diverse group that helps to do that. And we may end up having to go and discuss outside, bring in a partner to help us to make sure we're on the right path, recruiting and making sure that we're have diversity throughout.
Thank you, Chief Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gumbs. And finally, Councilwoman Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Chief Jones, if I could just back up a minute to when you were describing, I guess, kind of what the payroll processes would be, it sounded like, or how you would go about implementing it. It seemed to be a little convoluted, and like it might make more work for our staff, which, we don't. Our HR department isn't huge. We don't have a lot of people in our HR department. Is there some way to perhaps take a look at mapping these processes out to ensure that we're not creating an undue administrative burden for our HR staff once we get to the place where we're trying to implement some of this?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Great question. We've been working kind of hand in hand with HR to develop this. One thing we are excited about and to fix a lot of some of our issues is going with ADP. ADP, you're allowed to actually map out some of these programs, but again, it would be just like a promotional process. You have certain educational requirements and years in that grade, so it should be all automated. Once a person gets to that point, they can submit it, it'll be approved, and they would be moved up. So we should be able to map it out and make it automated to where there's not a lot of hands-on or staff hours to actually compile this. It would be in the front end, building out those processes in ADP for us. And so that's one of the things that we hope to do. And again, while we're taking this step by step to make sure we're not putting undue pressure on anything or anybody. And again, when I got here, we had 2 people in training trying to implement our professional development. We have already moved 6 people out to training to make sure we're meeting our goals and getting our training hours and everything we need. We've updated our training platform, so we have a new technology out there to help us track everything as far as ISO hours, as far as certifications, deadlines, things like that. So we are working hand in hand with several departments, IT, HR, fiscal, to make sure that we are using technology to our advantage and automating as much as we can to take the burdens off of any staff.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that answer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Would you sound the next item?
Thank you.
Yes, the next item is item number 4 under presentations. This is proposed personnel policies revision and plan for a performance appraisal program. This will be presented by Nikki Graham, the HR director, and Tammy Sadler Jones, city manager.
Greetings, council, mayor, and council, and everyone tonight. Thank you. City Clerk, Corey, do you have my presentation?
Yes, it's forthcoming now.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me, city manager and mayor and council, to cover the revised HR policies and procedures that were sent to council and staff in December. The following listed policies that are presented to you tonight have been written in collaboration with the city attorney, the staff attorney, city manager, HR manager, and myself. These revisions addressed all concerns and questions that were brought forward by council and the department heads. So at this time, we ask for your blessings in approving these policies so that we may move forward with creating a healthy, structured for fair and consistency in our work environment. These policies will allow us to align our practices with our policies and vice versa. So next slide. At this time, I'll pause for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, I see in the queue, Councilwoman Willis.
That's an old, you never did take me out of the queue from the last time. Good.
Dr. Rao.
So I'm just clear. So these are the areas where there's changes, and we are going to get in the detail on each of these. Is what you're going to come, and I guess maybe at the February meeting you're asking for us to vote on. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, Dr. Rao, that is correct. So these policies were presented to council in December, and we went back to the table and we revised with all council questions, department head questions.
Okay.
We revised them. They're going to go through the legislative process. And so you'll have a chance to go through the legislative process at comments if you wish, or piggyback on the comments that were already made in December, and then we can vote, council can vote later this month.
Okay, thank you. One other question. I know we talked about drug policies. Are they addressed in it? Oh, yep, substance abuse. Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ms. Graham, I have just a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
How do these, what was the impetus behind these policies, and how do they comport with, we've heard a lot of comparisons of our sister cities and our neighboring jurisdictions. Does this bring us more into alignment? Does this put us ahead of the other jurisdictions? Can you just speak a bit about that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So these policies originally were vetted against other municipalities, our neighboring municipalities, as well as we went into collaboration with the city attorney, staff attorney, city manager to make sure that they aligned with what the council has asked and would like to see in practice. So they've been vetted all the way through. So we've looked at what others are doing, and we looked at what works best for the city of South Fulton moving forward. So it's to add clarity where there was confusion or ambiguity in our policies. And also, as Chief Jones just spoke a few minutes ago, one of the policies, for example, is holiday pay. So it's something that, again, we are putting in place to make sure we are not hindering the things that will help our employees in the future, like receiving their holiday pay when the holiday is actually occurs.
All right, thank you. And then as we transition to our last topic, I believe, around HR, we've heard from police and we've heard from fire about these pay incentives and people leaving our jurisdiction to work in other places, or or that being a concern. So my first question is our attrition rate from police or fire different from what is happening in other municipalities?
So that's a question for me, correct? Yes. So without having numbers in comparison to other municipalities, I can tell you what I'm seeing when I go to the conferences and I have conversations with my colleagues at other municipalities, HR directors, et cetera. What we're finding is that, especially in the height of the pandemic, that we're all fishing from the same pool of candidates. So again, as Chief Jones mentioned, they will leave for other perks at another municipality. So there are things that we can do to be more attractive and have more retention. Chief Jones was correct. He and I have worked hand in hand since I've started with his career development plan. And that is something that's going to be very attractive, to know that you have a career path, a step up to get to another pay level. When people see that their pay is increasing in some shape, fashion, or form, that's more of a incentive for them. Even a merit increase. I've heard tonight merit increases mentioned. So those are things that we can do to set ourselves apart from the issue that a lot of municipalities and even private sectors are experiencing with employees turnover. We're not unique in that situation.
All right, thank you. And the second question is like unto the first. We've heard again about this attrition, or this threatened attrition from public safety sectors. How has the turnover in public safety, what is that like compared to the turnover in the rest of the departments in our city? I know that we've had some departments that have been decimated by resignations. So do we have any data on how one department is doing compared to some of the other departments in our city?
Yes, sir. And city manager provided that in the memo that she provided to council. And it outlined, it broke down by department as requested. So in that description, you did see higher numbers in your public safety departments, but also understand you have a higher population of employees in your public safety departments. But in regards to the smaller departments, you also had turnover in those areas as well. So, it's.
I understand. Yeah, I saw the raw numbers. I was thinking about the percentage, and when we look at the percentage of staffing that we've lost in some departments, it's been very high in several departments across our city. And with that, thank you so much. And
Question, Mayor, I raised my hand. I went in the queue and raised my hand. I have one question.
Councilwoman Willis, go ahead.
Ms. Graham, it was mentioned that you are working on the premium pay and you are working on the first responder pay. Do you have any idea when you will have that? Will you have that recommendation completed within the next 30 days to bring before this council?
So I do believe that we just went into an agreement with our new grant writer. And one of the things that I have with Karen, our finance director, scheduled is a meeting to have with them to talk about the things that we are already trying to or have paid out, that we are trying to see if the funds can cover that. Because we do have, as Chief Jones mentioned, we're trying to pay out a lot of the time that was bucket in the time of the pandemic and when the city was short staffed, as well as when they couldn't earn their holiday time being paid out when it was earned, and their comp time being accrued in buckets. So if we can allocate some of that funds to pay out some of those buckets that are currently being held right now, that would be a huge incentive and very attractive to our employees. So that's what we are meeting to try to discuss, because if I'm clear with my understanding, there are specific guidelines on when that premium money can be applied to. So it's not something that I can use for future ideas or future plans or programs. It's got to be something that was earned during that pandemic time frame. And the only thing that I can really tie to that right now is those leave buckets that accrued, so that we can try to pay them out. So that is my plan, that is my hope, and that is what I'm going to work with the new grant writer that's been brought in and our finance director in trying to accomplish.
Well, Ms. Slayton, Ms. Graham, and Ms. Sally Jones, again, this bucket of money has been sitting for over 6 months. Employees know we have it. I would strongly like to suggest, and I would take this offline and talk with you all again, that we have a recommendation within the next 30 days.
Yes, ma'am, and we can do that. But, Councilmember Willis, I do have to stress that again, this money has to be used for specific purposes. And as long as it falls under those guidelines, that would be our recommendation on how to use it. And I know that the mayor has asked GMA representatives to speak again on ARP, and I know they're waiting to present tonight too. And a recommendation from our auditors, they have, told us that we need to make sure that we get this right on the front end when we're using federal dollars.
And I understand that, Ms. Jones. I am just making a very valid point that this money has been sitting with us for 6 months. So I'm being as respectful as possible, but it appears 6 months is well enough time for us to have figured out how we maneuver to get this money, distributed in a proper way and getting our employees compensated. And so I just don't want to sit here another 90 days or another 60 days with the same story saying that we're trying to figure out what we can legally do.
And Mayor, I'll make sure that for the benefit of our new council members that I send the presentation that was done that includes all of the timelines and all of the projects that the council approved in October 26th of 2021. So we'll make sure we get that, and then we'll work with the staff to provide a plan on and how we need to move forward in using those allocated funds that the council approved.
Can I also chime in and piggyback and say with City Manager, Councilwoman Willis, we also just recently paid, as Chief Jones was saying in the comp time, we have paid out over $194,000 towards the buckets that were accrued, and we're hopeful that that money that we paid out will also be able to come from the money that's the ARP. So that's what we're waiting to see with our new grant writer.
Okay, I just don't want us to be here 60 days still trying to figure out how to use this money. I'm asking that you all bring a recommendation back within 30 days and get our employees paid, please. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Clerk, if you would sound the next item.
Yes, so, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, Madam City Manager, you had another presentation. We're moving on from this.
Yes, I'm ready to present. May I begin, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the council had requested that I bring back a plan regarding performance appraisal evaluations for our employees. Ms. Graham will also assist me in discussing some, things that we're doing as far as retention and recruitment efforts for employees. And I did send a memo out to the council today. I sent it probably earlier in the day, providing you with the actual evaluation tool, and due to the amount of time, and the limited amount of time, I should say, I knew I wasn't going to be able to go through everything. So I wanted you to have that information, but just for some historical background, it's my understanding there was an attempt by previous leadership to do a performance evaluation process in 2019. That did not get started, is my understanding. The performance evaluation process actually began in October of 2020. So actually it's if I see the dates of the presentation information, it actually started the week before I started working here. And of course, when I started working here, everybody was working from home due to the pandemic. And so I did not know that there was an online evaluation process in place through Paycheck Flex. And for the benefit of our new council members, Paycheck Flex, of course, is our current payroll system. And you heard earlier, we're going to be moving to another system that we think will be a lot more robust and be able to capture everything we need for our population of employees. When that process started in 2020, it was a two-part process. It was a self-evaluation that the employee did, and then of course the supervisors and managers also did an evaluation of the employee. And since that time, we haven't had a citywide evaluation process, so that's why it's my recommendation, and also the council, you all had discussed a plan of bringing that performance evaluation back. We know that is needed. We know that, employee evaluations also provide feedback and assistance to develop our employees. So next slide, please. Of course, the goals of the performance appraisal is to provide feedback regarding an employee's performance, to help strengthen the employee as far as their service and fiscal stewardship and growth, and also to encourage opportunities that present ongoing learning and development. And I apologize if I'm kind of talking slow here. It's been a long day, but definitely want to go through this. It is my recommendation that because we haven't done an evaluation process since October of 2020, is that we begin this process on a biannual basis. And so using the beginning of our fiscal year, I thought was a good starting point. So we would go back and evaluate our employees from October 1st through March 30th, 2022. So for the last 6 months. And then, of course, the next process will be from starting in April, and that will be for any new employees that have come into our organization or joined our team since this particular time frame. We would do training. HR, of course, would be responsible for assisting us in doing training for our supervisors and our managers before the process starts. I do think that it is a good idea to have the employees do a reflection or a self-evaluation where they can fill out a form that provides information to their supervisor or the individual that's going to be doing the performance appraisal, so they can reflect upon what they did during that particular review process. Because sometimes even me as, you know, a city manager, when I've done evaluations, I may forget about some things that an employee accomplished, and it's good to be able to have that information before we begin the evaluation process. Of course, that would include meetings with the supervisors to go over the review, and the next steps would be, you know, any developmental plans or things like that that need to occur. Next slide. The timeline for the employees, we want to give them enough time to complete their self-evaluations. So that would start March 1st through the 18th. And then the directors and managers will complete their employee evaluations, and that would occur March 21st through April 15th. And then, of course, we would allot about 30 days for the supervisors and managers to hold evaluation meetings with their staff and to review and finalize those performance appraisals. And then all of that data will go be submitted to our HR department. And, you know, hopefully we can continue to have a regular process. And then it is my desire that we will eventually be able to tie the performance appraisals to merit increases. And I think, you know, that will be beneficial for our employees as well. I'm going to turn this slide over to Ms. Graham so she can just share with you a glimpse of our current benefits that we have for our employees.
Thank you, City Manager. So as listed on this slide, it covers things that we currently had in place, and added with this new fiscal year, as well as of January 1st of 2022. We have competitive medical and dental plans. We have pet insurance as well. We have a wellness plan. We increased our life insurance from $50,000 to $100,000. We added short-term disability, and we have vacation days as soon as you are hired, and actually it's 15 days of holiday pay and 14 days of vacation pay, and up to 12 weeks of sick pay. We have comp time. We have, we just increased our 401A 457B. We decreased it actually from 5 years to 3 years vesting. That took effect January of this year. And we increased the contributions once an employee hits 5 years and 10 years, they'll increase by 1%. We also added on retirement insurance for eligible retirees when they hit a certain age and amount of years of service. And we have, of course, an employee assistance program, as well as a financial assistance program that's tied to our employee assistant program.
Next slide, please. Some current incentives that we have, the council in this current fiscal year budget, you approve for all of our eligible employees to receive a 3% pay increase in April. Eligible employees are those who were employed with the city prior to September 30th, 2021. So those that were here prior to the end of the last fiscal year. We also included money for the Public Safety Housing Allowance Pilot Program. And I want to stress that that's a pilot program. And then we hope that we will be able to roll that out and include it for other city positions. But right now, the focus is for police and fire. And again, these were all approved in the budget. The conversation has come up about class and comp study. The last one was done in 2019. And I do think that it is time for us to do another one. So we will be working with HR and our purchasing department to get quotes to do a class and comp study so we can stay competitive with other municipalities. Our HR department does track our employees for the first 3 months of the employee's life cycle. That's something that has been implemented since Ms. Graham started with us almost a year ago now. She started with us in March of last year. And then one of the things that they do is they host a breakfast for our new employees on a quarterly basis. So Nikki, I'll let you take the rest of them.
Thank you. So here are some of our recruitment efforts. We are recruiting heavily. We are posting to different sites. We have a requisition form that our employees, our department heads fill out, and we will post to the sites of their recommendation for their positions. So we've got positions on GLGPA, LinkedIn, the American Planning Association. So we are trying to be as, as visible to all the candidates as possible to attract as many.
So at this time, if there are any questions, we'll be glad to address those. But again, I want to let you know that I did send a memo out to you today regarding this plan, and we will be sharing this information with our directors. We'll start with them at our next meeting, and because they haven't even had a chance to see this, we wanted to roll it out to the council first and get your feedback on the process. So thank you for allowing us to present, and if you got any questions or comments, I'll be glad to take those at this time.
Ms. Graham? Okay, your hand is down now. Councilwoman Willis?
Thank you for recognizing me. How soon will we be able to put out or get a pay and classification study? Will we have that in the budget for this fiscal year, or will we have to address that during the mid-year budget?
We probably will need to address it during the mid-year budget.
Okay.
So yeah, what I would probably want to do is try to see if we can get some quotes, initial quotes, and then we'll be able to have, a firm number to share with the council.
Okay. The only thing I would like to see, I saw where Ms. Graham posted where we have our jobs posted. Is there any way that, and I know it might be kind of challenging, but can we also look into getting our jobs posted with the Georgia Department of Labor? And also, if we could look into, I know that I've been working with Ms. Graham and her staff with the Metro Atlanta colleges and trying to ramp up our internship program. Is there any way that we could look into getting our jobs posted at the Metro Atlanta universities as well?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can definitely do that. And that was really just a sample of some of the places. So don't think that's the only places that we post at. That was just to give you an idea based upon some of the current jobs. You know, of course, PD and fire probably post in many of the different places for their jobs, but that was really just an idea to give you an idea of some places that we're posting at. But yeah, we can look at the Department of Labor and some of the other colleges and universities.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Sebastian.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of comments or questions. Have we ever considered using, for example, an employee referral program? I know some of the positions that we're hiring for are very, specialized, and folks tend to know folks within their industry or their area of expertise, and maybe that might be another incentive we could try. The other thing
Yes,
is,
if I'm not mistaken, I think our police department does that, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that can definitely be a good idea for us to do for our other city departments.
okay, thank you, Madam City Manager. My other comment is, do we have a way of measuring, especially for those departments that are more public facing, what is the impact of staff or the experiences like whenever the public comes and deal with one of our employees? Do we have ways of measuring those? If we do not, I would suggest that is something that we could look on as well. It'll probably help with the employee evaluation process throughout the year or every quarter or 6 months, however we do it. But that's something I would suggest that we could take a look on as well.
Okay.
And yeah, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sebastian, and I love the idea of the employee referral program for non-safety personnel as well. Dr. Rao.
Just really quickly, this goes back to just communication in general. I know you said you wanted to present this to the council beforehand, but a number of these initiatives, like, we had already budgeted for the pay increases. I think, sharing that information in a public way as we continue to try to be competitive. I've seen where East Point, they've talked about all these things that, our sister cities are offering, and we actually offer them in the city of South Fulton. So I think getting our messaging to a point where not only it's outward facing, but also for our employees too, so that they do understand that we support them. I think that's critically important. So I would ask that the city manager and the communications work really hard to make sure that is pushed down in the organization so they know these things are already in place.
Yes, ma'am. We can certainly do that. And then we did share this information about the pay increases when we had our last leadership on location over at the Southwest Arts Center. When we had all of our employees that could come, and we had a significant number of them that came. We did communicate that to them at that time about the 3% pay increases and the public safety housing allowance, but we can definitely continue pushing it out. I mean, I agree with you. Communicate.
Over communicate. And again, I think the Daily Drip is a great tool to share that information that comes out of the HR department, because, while there's a lot of discussion on public safety, we have really many of these programs, of course, are for all employees, to include the decreased vesting period, which I think is extremely attractive. And I think it's all in one place. People can read that.
Yes, we will re-push that information out to our employees again.
Thank you.
All right, and I see no more hands, so we're going to head to our next topic. And I will say, as we transition to that topic, we've talked a lot about money tonight, and cash incentives or financial incentives for many different kinds of employees. We're going to talk about it one more time, and that is the a possible bonus or retention bonus for all city employees. It's something that has happened in DeKalb, in Atlanta, and in Fulton County. So Ms. Becky Taylor is here from the Georgia Municipal Association. Would you go ahead and sound that item, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. We're at item 5 on presentations, discussion. Discussion regarding $2,500 ARP bonus for all city employees. Mayor Khalid.
And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Taylor. This was a question that I asked because we were talking about competing with our other municipalities and our localities. So I wanted to find out how it was that other counties were able to do these bonuses.
Good evening, Mayor Khalid, and to members of the council. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and thank you for the opportunity to join you this evening. I do have a few slides that I'll share with you if you'll give me just a moment to connect my screen. I want to give you just a quick background of the ARPA State and Local Fiscal Relief Fund. That's the fund that is available now to cities throughout the country, including all cities in Georgia, as well as the city of South Fulton. Just a quick couple of highlights here. Georgia is receiving about $1.4 billion in ARPA local fiscal recovery funds. This is an unprecedented amount of direct block grant funding to every city and town in the state of Georgia and in the nation. There are 23 metro cities in Georgia. Those are getting funds directly from the U.S. Treasury Department. Those are typically cities over 50,000 population and entitlement communities. Most cities in Georgia fall into the category of NEUs, which is 515 cities in Georgia. Generally, these are the smaller cities in Georgia under 50,000, and absolutely most cities in Georgia fall into that category. So as was referenced earlier, cities have received their first tranche of funds. Most cities got those back in May of 2021, and you'll receive your second tranche of funds around May of 2022. Basically, this is a COVID relief bill, one of many COVID relief bills. City officials, you should be congratulated for your hard work in getting this, because the legislation would not have been successful without your input and without your just letting people know in Congress that your communities were suffering from the pandemic, both in terms of economic need and public health needs, especially for disproportionately impacted populations. So this COVID relief bill is a response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. It ensures that governments will have the resources that they need to fight the pandemic and support families and businesses struggling with public health and economic impacts, to maintain vital public services, even amid declines in revenue, and to build a strong, resilient, and equitable recovery by making investments that support long-term growth and opportunity. Just a couple key points here, and then I'll step over to the conversation about premium pay. So ARPA is mainly for expenses incurred after March 3rd, 2021. There is an exception for premium pay so that you can do retroactive going back to the onset of the pandemic, which was identified in this legislation as in January 2020. The deadline to obligate funds is December 2024, and the deadline to spend funds is December 2026. That's really important when you're thinking about the method that you use in distributing premium pay to your employees. And then we do have an upcoming reporting deadline in April for the NEU cities and metros with a population below 250,000 that received less than 10 million. That's the first big deadline for those folks. And in this slide, and I will share these slides with you all, I'll just reply to the email, Mayor Khalid, that you sent earlier. These purple underlined words here, these are all linked back to the guidance. It's really important that You confer with your city attorney and discuss the eligible uses. The final rule was just released a little over a month ago. So a lot of cities in Georgia were kind of waiting. They had interim guidance for a really long time, but they were reluctant to get too far out in front of the final rules until they saw those. And those were not issued until January 6th, just a few weeks ago. But they're linked right here. You can see all 437 pages of the narrative and questions and answers from Treasury. The final rule incorporates a number of comments that were provided by city officials around the country, as well as GMA and the National League of Cities, to provide more flexibility for all recipients to be able to use these funds and to provide more simplicity and clarification of a lot of different questions that we all had with the interim final rule. You can also link to these other documents here. All of these together are considered to be the guidance that you would need to follow as recipients. And there is a lot here. That's why I say you should definitely confer with your city attorney, because there's just a lot of details in here. But generally what Treasury has tried to do with the final rule is to make these funds easier for you all to use. So that's kind of the bottom line. We do note that some of these, including the compliance and reporting guide, the official guidance there, and all of the documents at the bottom of the list here will help you figuring out how to document your spending and describe your reasons behind how you decide to use these funds, document your internal policies in place that you'll be following as you use these funds. It's the first time we've ever had this kind of funds. It's going to be the last COVID relief bill that we'll probably see. I've heard some suggestions that there may be another one, but it's very unlikely that we'll ever get something of this magnitude again. So we're all learning this as it has been added, as it is coming out. It's all very new, and we at GMA, we're not able to provide yes or no answers for how funds can be used. It's ultimately up to the recipient to review all of the items listed here and make your best determination about how you feel that the funds should be used to meet the needs of your communities. And every community is approaching this a little bit differently across the state of Georgia. GMA works with 537 cities. And I can tell you, and talking with a lot of them, that everybody has had a bit of a different approach to how they use funds. That being said, I'm going to skip over. You'll have all of these slides, but I just wanted to focus in on premium pay, since I know that's one of the items that Mayor Cleve, that you wanted us to cover this evening. So premium pay is one of the primary categories that's eligible for using state and local fiscal relief funds. Eligible workers are those that are in critical infrastructure sectors. Essential workers is what they're referred to in the legislation, and that involves regular in-person interactions or physical handling of items by others. Pay also must respond to worker needs. As I mentioned, that this is a relief bill. It's intended to help and target and prioritize funds for low-income persons, and often, government employees may fall into those categories. So this would be workers who earn at or below 150% of the state or county average annual wage. In Georgia, that's going to be around $78,000. You wouldn't be able to provide premium pay for anybody that's over that salary threshold. Pay must also respond to worker needs that are not exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act overtime rules, or the recipient provides written justification of how it would meet the needs to provide premium pay. So you can do this in a couple of different ways, and the guidance goes into a lot of detail about how you can decide how to do this. You can pay up to $13 an hour over and above what the employee is making now, or you can do lump sums to hourly, part-time, or salaried non-hourly workers. You may not exceed $25,000 for any single worker during the program. So you can basically do bonuses, or you can increase the hourly wage. Going back and thinking about our deadlines for using these funds, one issue that a lot of cities have considered is if they did an hourly increase, the ARPA funds could be used and obligated up through the end of 2024 and spent through 2026. But then beyond 2026, the city was going to have to figure out what to do. It's hard to take it back once you've got it out there. So you have to figure out if the city is going to be able to, take that level of pay and increase it as part of your salary plan going forward. So the bottom line there is a lot of communities across the state have opted to do bonuses for their workers, just because it was easier to document and easier just to target those employees who have been directly impacted by the pandemic and get funds into their pockets in a lump sum amount. The final rule clarifies that all public employees of local governments are included in the definition of eligible worker. So that means that, basically any public employee of a local government would be eligible. Volunteers are not eligible. The final rule also clarifies that elected officials are not eligible for compensation under premium pay category. That question did come up in some communities around the state. There's a little bit more detail on eligible worker, and the final rule clarifies that all public employees of recipient governments are already included in that definition, as I mentioned. Essential work is work that is not performed while teleworking, so you would not be able to provide premium pay to teleworkers. It would involve either regular in-person interaction with patients, the public, or coworkers of the individual that is performing the work, or physical handling of items that were handled by or handled by patients, the public, or coworkers of the individual that was performing work. Public works employees, law enforcement officers handling, driver's license, or, if you have employees who were required to be in City Hall handling documents from the public, all those would be considered eligible. So, and again, just statute defines premium pay as that up to $13 per hour in addition to wages that the worker otherwise received for all work performed by the eligible worker during the public health emergency, not to exceed $25,000 with respect to any single eligible worker. And then this again goes into details about what you would need to document. And then I also pulled out the section on retaining workers. This is in page 178 of the final rule narrative, because the final rule narrative includes kind of the questions and responses, the questions that were posed to Treasury in evaluating the interim final rule and the answers that Treasury provided. So a lot of recipients asked for a clarification, saying, pretty much what y'all have been saying here is very difficult to retain workers in this market, especially if you have another jurisdiction that is trying to, compensate their employees more than you may have employees that try to, go and just find another jurisdiction that could pay them more. It's hard to retain workers for a number of different reasons, not just for economic reasons, but also for public health reasons. So there's a number of considerations that employees have to make. I know that it's important to employers to have all the tools that they can at their resources to be able to keep workers on the job. But the final rule allows for an expanded set of eligible uses to restore and support public sector employment. Those eligible uses include hiring up to pre-pandemic baseline. If you had to furlough or lay off employees, then you could hire those employees back or fill those positions with ARPA funds, provide worker retention incentives, and pay for ancillary administrative costs related to hiring. The retention incentives would be designed to persuade employees to remain with the employer. So you'd have to document, and this is in greater detail. I'm not going to get into all of the detail that's in the guidance, but you basically have to substantiate that the employees were likely to leave employment in the absence of the retention incentive, and you should document their assessment. So a recipient can determine that a retention bonus is necessary based on the presence of an alternative employment offer for an employee. Worker retention incentives must be narrowly tailored to need and should not exceed incentives traditionally offered by the recipient for compensation that alternative employers may offer. And because retention incentives are intended to provide additional incentive to remain with the employer, they must be entirely additive to the employee's regular rate of wages and other remuneration. They may not be used to reduce or substitute for an employee's normal earnings. Treasury will presume that retention incentives are less than 25% of the rate of base pay for an individual employee, or 10% for a group or category of employees that are reasonably proportional to the need to retain employees, as long as the other requirements are met. So premium pay is one of the categories that you can use for your ARPA state and local fiscal relief funds. I'm going to share all of this information as well as the links to all the guidance, and just encourage you all, as you consider this as a possible way to use your state and local fiscal relief funds, to check out the information here. And also, I'm hoping that you all are signed up for GMA's ARPA webinar series. It's beginning tomorrow at 1 p.m. We're going to have 4 webinars with a federal grants expert. He has decades of experience administering and working with federal grant funds, and he's going to talk about reporting requirements and documentation that and give you some helpful tips for things that you'll want to keep in mind as you document this. This slideshow, I will not go through it all in the interest of time this evening, but it does, cover all of the different categories of eligible uses, ranging from vaccine programs, water and sewer infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, assisting small businesses and nonprofits with negative economic impacts, and replacing public sector revenue loss. If the city can document revenue loss directly related to the pandemic using the formula that Treasury has provided in their final rules, then you can use those funds for many different uses within your city. And the city also has the option of doing what's called a standard allowance. So you could claim up to $10 million for revenue loss, and that would be eligible for use for government services. So there's some flexibility there that you may want to look into for potentially using some of those funds for your employees. I would certainly encourage you to talk to other communities, such as Fulton and DeKalb, and Clark County has done certain programs using revenue loss and other eligible use categories, but talk to your peers and see how they did it. Talk to your city attorney and make sure that they're very familiar with all of the guidelines. And, hopefully that there will be something that the city can consider. I know that there are also other, community needs out there, and it's all a balancing act to figure out how to use your ARPA funds. So in the end, it's going to be up to the city leadership to determine the best way to use your fund. But hopefully I've given you some ideas of what the ARPA funds can be used for. And once again, I'll be happy to share these slides. Mayor Khalid, that's my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I see Dr. Rowell in the queue.
Thank you. This question is for City Manager Jones. I know it's been a while, but you actually gave us a recommendation based on the preliminary information we had on ARPA. Can you send that out to the council again so that everybody is memory is refreshed on what you recommended, because it was pretty succinct in the buckets at least. And now that we have this final guidance, again, kind of consistent with Councilwoman Willis said, that hopefully we can move towards implementation now that we have some clear direction. Can you send that plan out to everybody, and can that be posted on our website so the general public is aware?
Yes, I can resend it, and then I'll work with communications to add it onto our website if it's not on there already, but we'll definitely get that out to everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let me see if there are any more hands. There are not. So I had this question is actually for our city manager first. That plan, was it for just the first tranche of money, or was it for both the tranche that we received and the tranche that we will be receiving in May?
It was for the both tranches. Yes.
And so, I'm going to say in closing, I think those plans, I do want to see them, and I think that they're good as a reference or a starting point. But those plans were made before some of the presentations that we've heard today from fire, from our HR department about these incentive packages. So if there's a way that we might be able to use some of these ARPA funds for that, if there's some rebalancing that we can do. Lastly, I will say I had proposed in January, and we'll be talking about it at our next meeting, a set of revenue neutral or certainly more cost effective proposals to attract new workers, things like the summer Fridays and redesigning our workspaces. And they may not be favored by the council or even some of our constituents. I do think that it is important to take a second look at that. We've spent a majority of this meeting talking about financial payouts or increased HR expenses, whether they be the lowering of vestment periods. They're just a lot of things that we've talked about that are going to have huge fiscal impacts on our city. And we will never be able to compete with some cities that have larger budgets than us, right? Or some localities that have larger budgets than us. But two, we also, I think, should consider how some of these work-life balance proposals, like wellness days that we have, that I have proposed, might attract particularly millennial employees, which is a younger workforce, which would not only drive innovation in our city, but those younger employees that have less experience, we could bring them in on the lower side of a pay scale than more experienced folks. So just as we're thinking about this set of HR expenses that we are incurring and increasing in this budget and upcoming budgets, I think it's important, whether we use those tools or not, that we also think about incentives that don't necessarily cost money, but might still be attractive to employees. And with that, we are going to go to our final topic for this work session. Would you sound that item, please, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. The item number 6 under presentations, it's entitled Georgia Power Resource Planning. This presentation will be presented by Juan Smith with the Georgia Conservation Voters Education Fund.
Good evening, Council. My name is Juan Smith. I'm a community organizer and director of Georgia Conservation Voters Education Fund. I want to begin tonight by thanking my colleague Wanda Mosley from Black Voters Matters for bringing this issue up to the Honorable Councilwoman Willis. And I want to just give a shout out to our mayor for acknowledging the importance and making space on tonight's agenda. I'm ready, sir, for the presentation.
Coming up right away.
So as the presentation is loading, I'm coming before you tonight to implore City Council, or specifically the City of South Fulton, to intervene in what's called the Integrated Resource Plan that is proposed by Georgia Power and submitted to the Public Service Commission. Next slide, please. So who's GCV? Just a little bit of background about the organization that I represent. GCV is a civic engagement organization that's focused on people first government and people first energy. We organize with communities, we engage in the democratic process, and we advocate for energy justice. And how do we do that? From a people first and people centered perspective. Next slide, please. So So what is the IRP? And this is the background context, and this presentation is going to be pretty short because it's cut and dry as to why the city of South Fulton should intervene on behalf of the residents. Georgia Power must submit an integrated resource plan at least every 3 years to the Georgia Public Service Commission. The IRP must contain the company's usage forecast and describe the utilities program for meeting these forecasted requirements in an economical and reliable manner. For those of you who are not familiar with the responsibility and the elected body that's called the Public Service Commission, it is a body of 5 elected officials whose job is to ensure that we get safe, reliable, and reasonably priced electric, natural gas, and telecommunications. Again, throughout the entire state of Georgia, anyone who votes for the Public Service Commission, and they are in position to ensure that Georgia Power isn't a monopoly and that our rights and interests are taken care of. So the other thing we should know about the Public Service Commission is that they intervene on our behalf. And what has happened in the recent history of the Public Service Commission is that there have been consistent opportunities where they should have stood with residents, they should have stood with municipalities. However, they position greed and the profit of Georgia Power over the constituents. And I'm going to detail some of those instances as we continue through the presentation. In this particular hearing, this process dictates, and the codes are on the presentation below, that the utilities develop the resource that proved the most cost effective in helping Georgia meet its energy needs. Additionally, the IRP Act requires that the Public Service Commission determine whether a given IRP is adequately demonstrates the economic, environmental, and other benefits to the state and the customers that the utility represents. Now, why do people care? Why should the city care and why should residents care? The IRP directly impacts your constituents in terms of health, quality of life, and financial stability. All of our council and our mayor have been elected to represent the residents, and we are intentionally being removed from the process as residents. I'm going to delineate in the following slides. And we elected you to be our first line of defense, and in this particular instance, we need you more than we ever have. There are direct implications for the city of South Fulton in terms of the value that it brings to businesses, its residents, and direct costs that the city incurs. And then finally, because cities as a whole failed residents in the 2019 IRP process. Next slide, please. So the first bullet point is that the IRP directly impacts the constituents. It impacts us in 3 areas. The first is health. So in 2019, that was the last IRP. Every 3 years, this process happens. So one of the biggest takeaways or one of the biggest debacles out of that is that the Public Service Commission approved for Georgia Power to be able to pass on the cost of coal ash cleanup. Initially, Georgia Power charged residents for next slide. Georgia Power charged residents for the cleanups, but because they did a substandard job and because the coal ash was leaking directly into water supply, and I want to make sure in terms of health, you understand that Plant McDonough is a water supply or a power plant that contaminates the water supply that throughout the city of Atlanta, as well as the city of South Fulton, we get contaminated from the system that Plant McDonough contaminates. And this is a proven fact, which is why they were tasked by the EPD to do the cleanup in the first place. But after being tasked to do the cleanup, the Public Service Commission voted so that they could defer the cost from Georgia Power paying it to shift the burden to residents. In addition, Georgia Power invests in instead of investing in renewables, they invest in dirty energy sources that directly impact Black communities. Clearly, we always talk about how the city of South Fulton is the Blackest community or the Blackest city in the country, and air pollution and water contamination from coal-fired power plants is linked to asthma, cancer, lung disease, and other elements. And Blacks are 3 times as likely to die from air pollution. There are a number of clean energy solutions that Georgia Power could tap into. In terms of high energy burdens are simply the percentage of an individual's income that's spent on energy, in this particular instance, electricity bills. If you look at the graph on the right of the screen, it says out of metro areas in the entire country, Atlanta is 8th on the list for having 50% of low-income households that have an energy burden greater than 9.7%. 6% is considered high energy burden. 10% and over is considered extremely high. Residents should not be spending more than 3% of their income on energy costs. Now, I know we have a very diverse income makeup in the city of South Fulton, but the reality is that regardless to whether you're middle class, upper class, or low income, Black families pay higher electric bills, even when we make the same amount as others. So it's not just a matter of low income, but this is really a racial and a justice issue. And then finally, it's quality of life. In the first slide, it talks specifically about having the best options in terms of economic feasibility as well as renewable. And the way that energy companies generally do that is through energy efficiency mechanisms and weatherization mechanisms. Energy efficiency is basically getting the same amount of output for less input. So if you have Energy Star appliances per se, and then weatherization is protecting the building or the shell. In this particular instance, we're talking about city buildings as well as the residential houses of the constituents. And in some places throughout the city, the infrastructure is older as well as the housing stock for individuals. Now, the challenge is that most of us think of, we have a consumer type relationship with utilities. But what I'm trying to explain tonight is in the same way that the residents have a specific expectation for council because you were elected, that is the same type of relationship that residents should have with the Public Service Commission, because they were elected to do a very similar task in the area of electricity. However, you know, we, for whatever reason, think that we should be thankful because we have a customer or consumer relationship instead of acknowledging that in 2022, access to affordable energy, right? The ability to be able to heat our homes and to light our homes and to have a quality of life in the United States really should be a human right, and it should not be commodified because of greed. Next slide, please. So the second part is that you've been elected to represent us, and we, the constituents, have intentionally been removed from the process, but the city of South Fulton has a unique position because if you are an academic institution, if you're a nonprofit organization, if you are a city, you can intervene in the IRP proceeding and have a seat at the table. What do I mean when I say the community voice has been locked out? I literally mean that since COVID, the Public Service Commission has sought to totally obliterate the community voice at all of the hearings. So every monthly meeting that they have since the beginning of COVID, the only way that citizens can provide comment is through written comment via email 24 hours in advance. Now, as a council, you all know the proclivities of people to go through a written comment hassle, as well as municipalities across the entire state, as well as school boards and so on and so forth, have created ways, just like we have public comment in Zoom, for the constituents to be able to voice their opinions in real time. However, constituents have been totally removed from the process from the Public Service Commission, even though, just like every other democratic body, it's baked into the natural process. In addition to the monthly meetings, there have been significant hearings that are on the same scale as this hearing that's come up, where, again, residents who by code are supposed to be able to provide public comment and public hearing have been shut out. So whether that was to end the moratorium on shutoffs in the midst of COVID in 2020. We know how that impacted cities. We know cities got grants so that they could do rental assistance, provide a number of other services. But during that time, when the mantra or the cliche was that we were all in this together, the Public Service Commission allowed Georgia Power, the utility, to end the moratorium on utility shutoffs. Additionally, the Vogel Construction Management hearing, we'll talk about that in just a little bit, was another huge hearing where the public was supposed to have an opportunity, the same way big business has an opportunity to have a seat at the table, the same way, you know, the nonprofit organizations and the advocates who have the funds and the legal ease as well as the acumen to be at the table have a voice. The people who burden the brunt of Georgia Power's profits should have a seat at the table, and it's written that they should. However, literally, we've been locked out. So again, I just want to reiterate that the city of South Fulton has a unique opportunity because you have access to the process when they have left us out. The third point is that you are our first line of defense. And let me just be very clear. So I'm not asking for the city to be a pit bull. I'm not asking for the city to take on a fight. I'm communicating all of the reasons. I want to enumerate all of the reasons why it is specifically in the best interest of the city to be at the table. And then once you're at the table, the city can determine its position in the same way it does in every other affair. So specifically, the reasons we need you to be our first line of defense is because, as I stated before, this body of elected officials who, for whatever reason, you know, do not allow public comment in these particular spaces, and they are supposed to represent the people. In 2020, they voted to allow electricity and gas disconnections during COVID. In addition to the disconnections, they passed all of the additional COVID charges for overtime, for PPE, for their line workers, for their customer service workers, $7.7 million of COVID charges they passed on to the residents, even though because residents were in their homes and not working due to COVID, they gained more money and had more revenue. In 2019, the Public Service Commission voted for Georgia Power to raise rates to more than $175 per year on average for the customer. And I could go on and on and on, all the while in the last 2 years or so, we've been removed from the table. Next slide, please. The direct implications for the city of South Fulton. So primarily municipalities, cities in general, are at a disadvantage because a large amount of the energy that Georgia Power creates comes from fossil fuels, and that jacks up the cost for city-owned buildings. The second part is that by not lifting the cap on solar, it limits the ability of the cities to be able to use solar on government buildings. So right now, if the city wanted to invest in solar on your buildings as a cost-saving mechanism, the way Georgia Power has it set up, you wouldn't be able to recoup at the same rate that you pay when in most other states you can. So you still lose if you try to do the thing that is in your economic best interest. And then finally, if you're at the table and you can advocate for positions that would allow the city to create stronger conditions for your business owners. So another way to attract business owners are by being able to tout certain conditions, certain utility prices, certain type of connections and services. And if you're at the table, you can advocate for that, thereby making the city, again, more attractive to bring in businesses. And then finally, in 2019, cities failed to stand by and to represent residents. What am I saying? I'm saying that literally in 2019, the Public Service Commission touted some of the positions of cities when it came out that they had inequitable, unjust IRP results that negatively impacted low income and minority communities. And their responses to that was to highlight the position that some of the cities played to mask what their role and their behavior was. And so what we're asking now is to no longer allow the Public Service Commission and Georgia Power to hide behind that. Next slide. The process. The process is pretty simple. The Georgia Power filed on the 31st, and shortly after that, the Public Service Commission will give a public notice. There is an open application period to request to intervene that must be filed within 30 days. And so that's around mid-March or so. So the next part in the process is the Public Service Commission will open the application process and give public notice. Specific interveners respond to that with an application. Once the city becomes an intervener, the city decides the level of involvement. And that spectrum of engagement spans the gamut. So you can say, you know, we literally just want to be in the room so we can bring the information back to our constituents. Or you can cross-examine witnesses, you can file briefs, you can put expert witnesses up, you can literally negotiate for your best interest for the city of South Fulton as well. So your level of involvement is totally up to you. And then regardless of the level of intervention, as an intervener, again, the city will have a seat at the table, which is the most important aspect, so that they know that there's oversight. So they know that no, it's not just nonprofit groups and advocates, that their largest constituents, like their largest ratepayers, which are cities, these municipalities are watching what they do, and that what they do has to be in the best interest of the budget of the city, as well as the residents that reside in these particular municipalities. Support and next steps. If you all want more information, the Sierra Club has volunteered to assist. There is a lawyer on staff who can either talk to council or speak specifically to council, the city attorney, about, you know, the odds, the ends. The process to intervene is free. However, again, there are minimal costs associated with the level that you choose to intervene. And then finally, in terms of foresight, insight, best practices, there are a number of alliances that are situated to either be a collaboration partner with the city of South Fulton, so you don't have to go it alone. One of those specific alliances is the Southeast Sustainable Directors Network. The city of Atlanta, Athens, Fulton County, and Decatur are all a part of that, and they will be moving together to intervene in this particular process. So again, that's basically the long and the short, and I will yield to any questions. I tried to do it fast. I know you want to get out of my mind.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was super thorough, and I do see one question in the queue. I just want to remind people that Ms. Smith will be available, as well as folks from the Sierra Club who also reached out to me. So if we don't get to your questions tonight, there are many more opportunities for this discussion. I'm just going to start real quick, Ms. Smith. Is there a deadline for which we need to file any paperwork, make any application?
It'll be mid-March. So the Public Service Commission responds by putting out a notice. Once the notice is made public, all potential interveners will have 30 days to apply. And again, there's no fee associated with applying and being a part of the process. And it's fairly simple.
Thank you. And Dr. Rao.
Thank you. Quick question. You talked about a number of cities moving together in partnership with the Sierra Club. Can you speak a little bit more to what that means? Does that mean, you know, they're passing resolutions, urging them to take action? What does that look like as of now? Or are you all still devising that strategy?
So the particular organization is the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network. And it is a regional network, and a number of cities are a part of that. And the cities that are listed are the local cities that are part of that. And what they are doing, instead of each individual city intervening separately, they're coming together as a coalition, and they will determine, you know, whether or not they just want to be in the room, if there are specific measures that they want to advocate for, because you can also negotiate. So all of the cities may say, hey, we want to make sure as municipalities, we can get 10% renewable energy instead of this, or we can get a better price for solar. Whatever those particular negotiation tactics are that they come together, or they all just say, we want to come together to have someone to send us a debrief weekly. So you all would come together as cities and figure out what it is you want to do as an alliance. But there would be an overarching facilitator to navigate the process amongst the cities. And that would alleviate some of the pressure if cities decided to do it themselves. But a number of cities do it themselves, and also academic institutions and nonprofits.
So just for clarification, this is question, I guess, for the mayor or Councilwoman Willis. Is it that one of you all would be attending these meetings and bringing back an action, or what, in terms of next step from based on this presentation, what do you envision is the next step?
Are you gonna?
Yes, I'm gonna go first. I'm going to circle back with Ms. Smith and also take the temperature of the other mayors in the area. I consider this something akin to the lost negotiations, which we're already entering in. So the mayors are already in discussion around, a couple of issues, and I think this is just something that we can add to the plate in our meetings.
Okay, so for me, I will be circling back with Wanda Mosley. She was the one that brought this to my attention. I think for me, the thing that I'm most concerned about is the proposed rate increase that is on the horizon, especially amongst the time that we have a pandemic. We're still in the midst of a national pandemic, and many are still without wages. Many are still, there is environmental issues as well, but the most important thing for me is the proposed 15% increase. And then I also do think that we need more infrastructure resources that we have not gotten from Georgia Power.
And so if I can, I'm sorry, I just want to demystify something. So in August, the official rate hearing case will begin. So that's a separate hearing that begins in August. The way this connects to rate increases is two ways. In 2019, in the IRP, what they did was they approved a mechanism that by the time they got to the rate case in August and September, while the dollar amount wasn't approved, the mechanism for them to get the increase, which was $575 million was. So the reason we can't wait, I don't want to mischaracterize this as a rate increase, but if folks are not aware and at the helm now, the mechanism was already improved, but the dollar amount wasn't. So I just want to add that nuance, because technically the rate hearing does not happen until the end of the year, but last time they snuck it in and nobody saw it, and it was approved, just the dollar amount was put off down the line. And then in terms of the energy efficiency and the weatherization, those are the quickest ways that Georgia Power can lower our bills. And they also have dollars that they can invest in infrastructure to drastically cut the rates while they keep raising them. So,
and mayor and the city manager, well, most of the city manager, it would be very helpful if we can get our government affairs Georgia Power person to come in during a work session and present before this council and give us a presentation on what infrastructure improvements or investments they are making in this area. Ms. Sally Jones.
Yes, ma'am. I will get with our contact and get them scheduled for a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
All right, thank you. And with that, we have reached the end of our agenda for tonight. I'm going to ask for brief comments from members of council before we take this motion for executive session, if one is needed. I do want to note before we go through these council comments, there was one item that we did not discuss on the agenda, and that was extending our work sessions until 7 o'clock and beginning our zoning hearings at 7. I want council to really consider, given what happened in our meeting tonight, public comments notwithstanding, our work session tonight was 4 hours. There were 6 items on the agenda. There were several members of council and constituents that really pushed. They pressed very hard to have items on the agenda from the beginning with the audit to the end with this Georgia Power issue. We had a clock going for each one of these discussions, and the audit discussion was an hour. The fire benefits discussion was an hour. So if we're going to keep to 2-hour agendas, we're probably only going to be able to discuss 1 or 2 topics. I will leave it up to the council. If you all want to discuss more topics in the future, we're going to need a longer work session. I would suggest that we go no longer than 7 p.m. But I do want people to be mindful of that as they submit topics for both our regular meeting agenda and our work session agenda. The more items on the agenda, we either will have longer meetings or we will have less time to discuss each item. And I'm going to really enforce that because I really do want us to be able to get out of these meetings at 9 o'clock, including our executive session. So it looks like we're not going to make that tonight. Hopefully we will not be in executive session for a long time. And with that, I am going to ask.
Mary, you have some hands up. So may I ask, will you please acknowledge us?
So right now I'm going to ask for council comments. And
okay, well, I'm going to appeal that decision because you just I'm going to appeal that decision. And I just need a second. I mean, if anybody, because we have hands up, we will.
Can we address it in the public in our comments? Mayor?
Second, I'm going to go to council comments now. District 1, Catherine Rao.
Thank you. I think it is important for us to remember while we move towards the format we have, which was a work session. We've added public comment that added a significant period of time. And I think, even if we continue to gather them, I think if they're forwarded to us or figuring out a way to be more efficient, or we either start earlier, the reality is we're a big city. These decisions take time, and I don't think they should be rushed. I also want to remind everybody we just adopted the CDR budget plan that deals with the public hearing. I think it was at our last meeting. So again, these things are not happening in a way that makes sense, honestly. So, we need to be mindful. We voted on this already. We adopted a schedule and the staff is working towards that. So this change in midstream is just not good.
District 2, Councilwoman Gomes.
The only thing I want to share really is the time limit on the presentations. I think we did not adhere to that tonight. That has been something that we've normally, I think about maybe 10 to 15 minutes for a presentation, if not even shorter. But I think a lot of the presentations that were given tonight were not held to the time limit. So if there's a way that we can make sure that we're being consistent on that. But also as far as District 2, just want to remind you that we have some upcoming events coming. We have a town hall that will be held on the 28th. Also discussing sanitation, and then also too, we have a Heart Month event that is scheduled with some doctors and panelists that will be coming up. Please go to my Facebook page to find out more information, and also to my website at councilwomancarmelitagums.com. Thanks.
All right, District 3, Councilwoman Willis.
Yeah, so again, when you make unilateral decisions without the consensus of council, things happen. And we have an adopted process. We adopted the work session to be a session that we work and we talk about legislative matters that we are going to vote on in the future. And we also adopted that no presentation was supposed to be more than 10 minutes. And so changes were made unilaterally midstream. And so when Councilman Morale and I talked with the clerk, what he suggested is for us to put something in writing, and we adopted. So we are working on a process. We are working on legislation that we will be putting through the legislative process that will put a written process in place for our work sessions. We have a written process in place for our regular meeting, but we definitely need one for our work sessions. And we will be submitting that within the next couple of, probably within another week. There is a human trafficking forum that I will be participating in along with Chief Meadows, House Representative Deborah Basemore. It is hosted by International Awareness and Social Action Committees, the East Point College Park Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta on February 15th between 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. It is a virtual session, so please join in to hear what has been done and what will continue to be done to combat this terrible and senseless crime that is plaguing our nation and also Georgia against our little boys and girls. Thank you.
All right, District 4. Councilman
Thank you, Mr.
Sebastian.
Mayor. Again, I want to just say that we spoke a lot tonight about incentives for employees, about recruiting additional employees, and some of the things we're struggling with in terms of providing services and employees for our city. As I did in my speech that I was swearing in, I'm going to say it again. I just wish for us to become a boring city a little bit. And most of you I think would understand what I mean by that, right? I don't mean that we don't do great things. I don't mean that we don't have anything to say, but just, be careful with how we portray ourselves, because the world is watching us, and people who want to not only live here, but invest and spend their monies here are watching us. I think tonight was a great meeting, and I just wanted to let the residents, especially of District 4, know that, yes, we had some startup challenges in terms of getting our aides and so on board, but that is happening actually this month. And so I thank them for their patience. I've been basically going it alone, representing the district for the last 6+ weeks. But just please look out for additional communication from the District 4 office coming up in later February. Thank you.
All right, District 5, Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Thank you, sir. I just want to encourage everybody to participate in our book drive. There are drop-off locations at every fire station, some inside and some out. And we go all the way through March. And I will say something about this evening in the work session, that time is the most precious commodity that one has. We can never get it back. And as you said, Mayor, things should be done in decency and in order, sir. And that being said, we can just progress forward from here on out, collectively. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. District 6, Councilwoman Williams.
Yes, thank you. I will not prolong the time. I will simply say that I have nothing additional to add.
Thank
Just
you.
have their meeting.
District 7, Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I just want to say kudos to Banneker High School and their forum today that we attended with the students and the staff and faculty regarding positive solutions for the future, and welcome everybody to come out tomorrow at 7 p.m. For the community forum there as well at Banneker High School. And shout you out to Mr. Mayor for your input on that as well today, as well as your agreeing to allow the City of South Fulton's Development Authority, DBA Envision South Fulton, to be on the next work session that we have. All of our meetings are public, and we, in December, were fortunate enough to come to a close on the Old National project, and I look forward to the presentation from the Development Authority and Butler in bringing more information to this exciting project coming to Old National. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. I'm going to make a couple of quick comments. First, I want to just wish hell and farewell for Mr. Larry Dingle. He was a clerk in the city of Atlanta, had a very storied career. Many of us, including the previous mayor, our city clerk here, Mr. Adams, many of us in Fulton County knew him well. He is a Black History maker. And then I want to say happy 102nd birthday to Mr. William T. Roby Sr. He is a City of South Fulton resident, and I had a great time celebrating his birthday with the Old Timers Club. Want to remind everybody to please go see Closed Story. It is an amazing exhibit for Black History Month, running now through March 5th, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Southwest Art Center. This Saturday, we do have our genealogy workshop. You can register online. Just go to cityofsouthfultonga.gov and click on the link to register there. Seconding, Dr. Baker had an amazing time with these students at Banneker who were talking about the incident that they had. Ananda Broadnax, Tyler Davis, Shanika Jones, Genesis Hector, Jemiah Sparks, Xavier Alexander, and all of the students who spoke were amazing. I believe that Ms. Broadnax may be our next mayor here in South Fulton. We are going to continue the conversation about Banneker and community involvement in all of our schools. With Banneker graduates, Tori and Tiffany Tomlinson, their show Relationship Talk, we're going to have a part 3 of this conversation, thanks to Principal Stamper, who is committed to making sure that this wasn't just a one-time town hall, but that we're having several town halls in the community. So tomorrow we'll feature several community activists, and will also be a workshop. So if you are interested in getting involved with the young people in Banneker or in Fulton County schools in general, I encourage you to attend that tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Special congratulations to Fit Gym. We heard from Corey Krytel today. Their gym did win the best decorated business, and they will be receiving a special award tomorrow at 12 p.m. So if you're available, please come out to Fit Gym. That is at 7490 Old National Highway, right there at the corner of Old National and 138. As you heard, we are going back in person at the lovely Southwest Art Center Tuesday, February the 22nd at 4 p.m. So we look forward to seeing many of your lovely faces in person. We have missed you over the years. You can text Fulton to 33777 to sign up for my newsletter and mobile alerts about everything that is happening in South Fulton. South Fulton forever. And now I will entertain a motion to go to executive session.
Motion for executive session?
Second,
I'm sorry, can we get what we're going for? Mr.
second,
In personnel, you gotta specify the reasons.
Thank you.
Personal litigation and real estate.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Would you please call the vote, Mr. Clerk?
Roll call vote to go into executive session for personnel, litigation, and real estate. Councilmember Rao,
Yes.
Councilmember Gums,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
yes.
Councilmember Sebastian,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves,
Aye.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
and Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
That motion was approved unanimously. We are recessed at 9:08 for executive session.
Recording stopped.